Good morning, or good evening, everyone. My name is Kenneth Jackson, and I'm a senior majoring in Business and Global Affairs through the Joint Degree Program with the School of Foreign Service and the McDonough School of Business. I also served on the GU Politics Student Advisory Board for 2 years, and this year served as the Managing Director for GU Politics podcast, The Fly. Most importantly, though, I'm originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. This evening, it is my pleasure to introduce my home state senator, Senator Thom Tillis. Senator Thom Tillis was first elected to represent North Carolina in 2014 and is currently serving in his second term after being reelected in 2020. Senator Tillis is a member of the Senate Finance Committee, the Veterans Affairs Committee, the Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee, and the Judiciary Committee. Before serving in the Senate, he served as Speaker of the House in the North Carolina General Assembly, where he played an instrumental role in enacting job-creating policies and reforming North Carolina's tax and regulatory codes. He lives with his wife, Susan, in Huntersville, North Carolina, not far from me in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, which he's also in, and they're the proud parents of 2 grown children. On a personal note, I've appreciated that during his time in the U.S. Senate, Senator Tillis has carved a lane for himself as a voice of moderation, regularly speaking out in support of Ukraine, voting for bipartisan bills like the 2022 Respect for Marriage Act, and most recently, voting against the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Moderating tonight's conversation will be Mo Elathi, Executive Director of GU Politics. You can join the conversation on social media by tagging @GU Politics. Now, please join me in welcoming Mo and Senator Thom Tillis.
Take the far seat. Good evening. Where's Saxa, everyone? Senator, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
Senator,
Sorry I'm running late, by the way. I had to vote late, and then I skipped out on the other one.
you sound like a college student.
As long as you can pass the grades, doesn't matter.
I'm so excited to have you here tonight. Senator and I were just talking backstage about this event. This is, as some of you may know, GU Politics' 10th anniversary. And I was telling him, you know, when I came back to Georgetown to help build the Institute, I came in planning to build it based on politics as I knew it. And 10 days after I started, Donald Trump came down the escalator, and politics hasn't been the same. I don't think that's a partisan thing to say. And we've been living in this era of mass disruption, economic disruption, cultural disruption, social disruption, political disruption over the past decade. And so as we think about our 10th anniversary and the next 10 years, we thought that this entire year would be a great time to examine what should the future of public service look like? What can and should it and might it look like 10 years from now? And so we're going to be having this conversation with a number of people in the arena over the course of this academic year. And we're so excited to have you here as our kickoff to this series.
Yeah, I'm glad to be a part of it.
So let's just begin with that, right? we threw around words like disruption and chaos backstage. How do you describe this moment in our history through the prism of public service?
I kind of wonder, there have been 2 or 3 periods in American history where we've gone into a populist phase. Probably the one I paid the most attention to was the Gilded Age. The challenge that I have, I've been going around and saying, folks, we're going through a populist era. You know, it really started with President Obama. He was a populist, and then Trump comes in and kind of puts it on steroids. At the same time all that's happening, social media becomes the primary source of people's news. All that stuff is happening at once. So for the past several years, I've been talking about how it will follow the same arc, and then we'll have somebody elected who just says kind of chill out. Let's, not forget our 2-party system. I think having ideological poles are very important and, foundational to the success of this country, but we'll get back to normal. Now, I'm not really 100% sure that's true. Because of the amplifier of social media, the very low cost of entry for having a voice, and sometimes paid for rather than acquired through popular support. So it's an interesting time, I think, for people who are interested in getting into politics. Just if you're from North Carolina, and if you're not from North Carolina, practice our state motto, esse quam videre, which means to be rather than to seem. That's what we need in future leaders. You know, just be who you are, not what your base wants you to be. That's why I get in trouble with my base from time to time. It's why I have a statewide censure against me for taking the policy that I did, and I stand by all that, and it's all aging well. So my advice to you all, if I don't get asked the question, is just be who you are. Don't be who this populist machine expects you to be to get a vote. I'm living proof that you can bat 1,000 on every election and still be yourself.
You know, it's interesting. I look back at the arc of the history of the Republic, and it, you know, through most of our history, our politics has been divided on sort of this left versus right axis, right? Around that central question of what's the appropriate size and scope of government. With a political left that says it can be more activist and a political right that says it should be more limited. But you brought up populism. We're seeing this populism rise on both the left and the right. And a lot of what you hear from each of them, lots of differences, but kind of railing against a lot of the same problems, a lot of the same concerns.
Yeah.
What's at the root of all that?
Yeah, I don't know. I was listening to, I think it's Buffalo Springfield that's, you know, singing, what is the line in that? People carrying signs, mostly saying "Hooray for our side."
Right, right.
So we've gotten less focused on an intelligent discussion about policy differences and more about fundamentally how can you be Republican or how can you be Democrat or how can you be a conservative or how can you be a liberal progressive. I think it forces people, you got to go back to talking policy. I was up at Harvard a couple of weeks ago speaking to a group of people that were asking me about some of the bipartisan bills that I addressed and said something about being courageous. I said, it's not really courageous, nor was I. When people think a Republican as being, you know, bipartisan, then they naturally think that I've somehow embraced a Democrat ideal or vice versa. I said, you ought to really go look at the substance of some of these so-called bipartisan, you know, sellouts and look at the letter of the text, which were really well-balanced, something that liberal people like, something that conservative people like. We need more people that focus on that because I really believe in my heart of hearts, that's where 60, 70% of America is. And it's on future leaders to have the courage to not be overly influenced by the 15% at either end of the ideological spectrum that do not represent, I think, the majority of America.
Seems like so much of our political rhetoric today is fueled, again, by sort of the populist left and the populist right, by this anger and distrust of institutions, right? Not government, but all institutions.
It's a formula. I mean, people are selling that. You know, it's the swamp, it's the deep state. And I hear, today I was in Judiciary Committee. I heard Democrats and Republicans saying the same thing for different reasons. But it's almost like we're getting in these tired old catchphrases and mottos or, you know, incendiary rhetoric that really don't have any nexus to a policy outcome or even really creating an environment where people feel comfortable with having a difference of opinion. I mean, I've got some of my best friends are some of the most liberal people that I would write a max out check to their opponent if I lived in that state and I was interested in a campaign. And we know that. And I know that about them. I know they're going to North Carolina before I decided to retire and recruiting something and get someone against me. Kirsten Gillibrand, great example. I said, so how was your fundraising this week? Against me. And I said, I don't know, I'm hearing mixed reviews about whether or not you're recruiting the right candidate against me. Kind of hurtful that I know all this stuff, but come on, Kirsten. But I mean, having that kind of relationship with somebody who has ran to get elected to be the chair of the committee that's coming after me. And I've done work with her and I couldn't care less. I mean, that's what you all hopefully will do. Those of you who choose to be leaders. It's easy to be angry. It's easy to yell at people and call them names and they send me $50, $75, or $100 and I'll fight for you. You go out there and look at it, you got to decide as an elected official what you want to do. If you want to actually produce results versus rhetoric, it takes a lot of work and patience. And almost all the people that you all know by heart have one thing in common. They produced almost nothing the entire time they've been here. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. There is an inverse relationship between all the incendiary, divisive rhetoric and their results. Pick a major. Mine's on actually legislating. I don't like being hateful, and I don't like undermining people just for the sake of the sport or getting a $50 check or increasing my followers on social media. But if you're there for that reason, you're there for the wrong reasons.
But it seems like that's where the incentive structure is today, right? Like the person who has sort of that moderate or calm tone can't raise $2 million overnight in $25 increments with an email. That, it seems like voters are, or at least a lot of voters are rewarding those who are loud and angry.
That's true. You got to break through, though. I mean, otherwise, what are you doing this for? Just because you can prove you raise money? Wow. I mean, really, what are you here for? I mean, are you here to produce a result, to make a difference, even if it's at the expense of your next election? I mean, what are you here for?
Let's back up. You had a long career in the private sector before you entered.
A very expensive, time-consuming hobby.
Yeah. So what compelled you to run for office?
Mountain bike trail. Yeah, it was like a comedy of errors. I moved to North Carolina. I was a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers and management consulting. Moved to North Carolina. Shortly after I moved there, a buddy of mine who I'd known for years up in Boston, when I lived up in Boston, introduced me to mountain biking. Find myself in the woods. I obedience train my dogs. I'm playing hide and seek with a dog. I said this land would be a great place to build a environmentally sustainable single-track mountain bike trail. Found out that it was owned by the town. Went to the town, did a management consulting presentation to get that mountain bike trail done. That goes on the back burner. 2 years later, I become a town commissioner. 4 years later, I beat a bombastic Republican and a two-term Republican in a Republican primary. Went in the legislature, freshman 2 terms, speaker 2 terms, and now I'm in the Senate. And the mountain bike trail got built about the time I became speaker. That was it. I mean, if it hadn't been, I'm a management consultant. Find a project, use a methodology, set a timeline, a budget, execute results. And you get in there and you go, well, this town needs, I'll deal with the mountain bike trail, but this town needs a at-risk youth and senior center. So I'm working on that, and I have this guy in the legislature kill that project, made me mad, challenged him in a primary, and beat him like a drum. And if it hadn't been for that, I'd probably still be finishing out my career as a partner at Pricewaterhouse or IBM Global Business Services, where I spent the majority of my career. So
we talked about why you got in, why are you getting out? Why walk away at this moment?
Because I'm old. I'm 65 years old. I was seriously considering, I was running for re-election. I've been in here for 2 terms, and I've been very open. My staff knew, and everybody knew that I was going through. For a brief period of time, I had decided not to run for re-election after my first term. And had it not been for a discussion with really 1 or 2 people, I wouldn't have run the second time. I'm just not wired to do this sort of job. It's not who I am. What I do is not who I am. So I found myself doing this, and I was going through what I call confirmatory due diligence and deciding whether or not I could raise the money. I mean, this was going to be a $600 million race in North Carolina. Twice what it was in 2020. It was $296 million, which was twice what it was in 2014. So I had to be, convinced I could raise the money, but I also had to be convinced that I could run on policy, outcomes that I would be happy with, and that I also wanted to do it in balance with all the other things I want to do with my family and my grandchildren and everybody else. So then I had the disagreement on the H.R. 1, the so-called big, beautiful bill with the president, and it just seemed like the right time to let him know that I don't change my vote. I don't care who you are if you ask me to. And it was time to find a replacement. So that's how I got to an accelerated announcement of what, in truth, probably I was trending that direction, would have done it around this time frame. But But I want to go do other stuff. I am 65 years old, but I'm reasonably healthy, reasonably fit. I think most of my mental acuity is still in place. My staff wonder from time to time. But I want to go out and probably spend another 10 years in the same gear I'm in now, which is working 60, 70 hours a week and 5, 6 days a week. That's what I'm wired to do. I've been working since I was 12 years old when I first got a work permit and paid into Social Security. I haven't missed a year since, and I just can't imagine slowing down. But I just don't think that this is the right outlet for what will be the final career.
Yeah. So you've been in the Senate now for 10 years, 11 years?
10 and a half years.
What's the biggest change you've seen in public service during the last decade?
People just afraid of the far rights going outside of the margins of the party, the most extreme elements. So think about our far right as a Republican or far left if you're a Democrat. Just the outsized influence they have over people. I can't imagine being afraid of a campaign threat if I'm not up for re-election until 28 or 30. I mean, it's amazing to me, though, how I talk to people every day, and they're not up until 2030, and you're worried about a campaign threat? You have any earthly idea how many other things you're going to do to piss people off by 2030? To be so focused on the moment? And it's just I mean, I get it with House members. They're up for election every 2 years, right? So I get it. But why on earth? I mean, there's a reason why we have 6-year terms. And a part of that is to be able to exercise our oversight role, to be in a position to do that, even when your party is in power, and to have 2/3 of the body at any one time pretty much free of the immediacy of any sort of political consequences for your decision. Now, I've done a lot of stuff in the year that I'm in cycle. I wouldn't recommend this for everybody, but at least, come on, have that courage. But it is really virtually evaporated. I've been having some discussions recently on some things I hope we get done next year. It's like, well, it's going to be tough on my campaign. I said, you're not up until the president's out of office. Why would that matter? So that, I think, is the biggest high-level example.
You recently you had to deal with something where you were getting death threats.
Oh, yeah, he's in prison.
And he just got convicted, right?
Very proud of that. Number 3. Don't let that happen to you.
Do you see, it feels like we're in an era of political violence and at the very least threats of political violence, unlike what we've seen since maybe the 1960s.
I think it stems from people becoming emboldened by being invisible and seemingly invincible on social media. And then that becomes a part of their personality. And I've seen that. I mean, my staff have to hear it. About 2 or 3 times a year, someone will come up to me and interact with me in a way that makes me feel like they think they're on social media. Now, back in June, I informed the president that there was no way on God's green earth that I was going to let Ed Martin become the prosecutor in the D.C. district. I had a lot of reasons for doing that, and I just made it clear it wasn't going to happen. I'm the deciding vote on judiciary, so it wasn't going to happen. But I had a man at the airport come to me at the Admirals Club on C Concourse. And I'm right in the lobbying area. He gets out to me and says, I want to talk to you about Ed Martin, just coming out. You were wrong to do that. If you come to me, I promise you, any of you come to me, a complete stranger, if you come to me and say, Thom, or I prefer Thom, Senator Tillis, whatever you want to call me, I'm trying to figure out why you took the position you did with Ed Martin. I'll spend the evening with you. But if you come in and come after me as if you're posting some sort of hateful comment on social media, but you're in my presence, keep in mind I grew up in a trailer park. I don't mind fighting at all, physically or verbally, don't really. Grew up that way and I'm cool with it. Then I'm gonna wear your ass out. Which is exactly what I did to that man, so much so that the people at the American Airlines counter said, sir, would you mind taking that outside? I said, yeah, I'll finish this discussion with the asshole down in the concourse. My point here is I want to let them know I'm not going to be abused by them. And if you want to post that, you should probably be invisible and invincible behind a screen. We can't let that sort of discourse become commonplace. And I know it sounds counterintuitive that I would go after that way, but I call it mirroring. I will mirror your behavior right down to the body language. If you stick your finger in my chest, I'm going to stick my finger in your chest. If you use profanity, I'm going to use profanity. If you're loud, I'm going to be louder. Because I've got to make that person wonder if the next time they may be dealing with another Thom Tillis, and it may make it more likely that they'll just do that hate speech online and stop interacting with people. Because it's escalating into violent acts. It's escalating into violent acts. I mean, the people that I've had put into prison deserved it because they threatened to kill me or my family. And they better be lucky they didn't do that in my presence.
It's one thing, though, when it's coming from random people who think they're living in a digital world, right? Mm-hmm. But you're hearing more and more of it from people in leadership positions, right? Who are using violent rhetoric, who are dismissing, dismissive of certain acts.
Yeah, but it's a bipartisan issue. I mean, anybody wants to get into a discussion saying, well, it's just the Republicans being hateful. No, it's everybody. I mean, all you got to do is look at committee hearings and see how people behave in the hearings. And some of the rhetoric that we use are sort of the rationale that we use for righteous violence versus bad violence. Because the bad violence was motivated by a far-right person or a far-left person. We've got to step up and say all this crap has to stop, folks. The crap on January 6th, anybody who knows anything about me knows that I went to the Senate floor and said the president's pardons of the January 6 people that harmed police officers sucked. I used that word for a purpose. I told every Capitol police officer that. But I've also gone around and said that you can, on the one hand, criticize the people that were responsible for January 6th, but condone what happened in Kenosha, Portland, and other cities. Just intellectually dishonest. All of it's wrong. Mostly peaceful protests on CNN with a burning building in the background. Like Jeffrey Dahmer had an eating disorder. I mean, let's not understate the obvious there, folks.
Yeah, it's hard, right? Like, I spent 6 years as a Democratic contributor on Fox News.
Yeah.
And I got
You do good work, actually.
I appreciate that. I got a lot of that stuff, right? And it all came from social media. But every now and then I would encounter someone in the real world, right? And it's funny, during all my time at Fox, I'm a pretty even-tempered guy. The only 2 shouting matches I ever got into on air was on the topic of civility in politics. No, your side's worse. No, your side's worse. Yeah. And it's that sense of tribalism that seems to be infecting our politics. Is there a way that fever breaks?
I think some people are incurable. I think that what's more important is how you all behave in the future. And then accept that this could be, I mean, people have dug, they're digging themselves very deep holes. It's going to be hard for them to reverse it. And they've lost perspective. Anytime that they think it's only one side that's part of the problem, then they're not being intellectually honest. I mean, they're just not objectively looking at the way that you and I would look at things. So maybe some of the younger people of the future, it's on you all. I mean, you'll either have what we have and wish it was only this bad, or you'll be a part of the generation that says now it's time for adults and respect and civil discourse to rule the day. I really do think that it's going to be very difficult to reverse the hearts and minds of most of the people here if they've already committed to this. And some of it's a drug. I mean, some of these people love, having these rants in committee and, cheering for one side and criticizing the mirror image behavior of the other side. Hopefully, they can walk some of that back. But I'm more interested in laying the seeds for saying, you can talk all you want, you can give good speeches, you can raise money, but if you haven't produced a result, you don't impress me. If you just show up in the chamber, but I mean, just answer me this question. What is the one bill that most people would give you credit for having led that's had an impact on people's life that you're the most proud of? And you're going to be hard-pressed to find the people at either end of the spectrum, we all know who they are, to have an answer to that question because they haven't done it. And you got to decide. I mean, do you want to be a performer or do you want to be a producer? Do you actually want to get out and produce good language and be a good steward of this wonderful democracy, or do you want to aid and abet its ultimate decline? And it's not a given that we'll be here 200 years from now. It's only going to be possible if we address some of the real risk in public discourse and rule of law that we have today.
Let's get into a little bit of policy.
Are you keeping time on me or something? Are you telling me like to slow it down or what's going on there?
You're good. This is how long until they get to ask you the good questions.
Oh, okay. Well, I will tell you all this too before we get started, just so you can give some thought to it. I love questions. This is one finger up means, and this finger, by the way, one finger up means, just general question, not accusatory or confrontational. Two fingers means potentially spicy question. I give priority to the two-fingered questions. But now, go ahead.
All right. When we were celebrating our 5th anniversary, if you had done a survey of students at Georgetown about what issue was most important to them, that was the most on their mind, I think climate would have been it. It's interesting, what I'm hearing a lot more, and you all will tell me if I'm wrong, that I hear a lot more of these days is AI, is an issue that is on a lot of people's minds from a policy perspective, from a professional perspective.
From a job displacement
right? People wondering if they're going to have jobs or, when they graduate, or if it's all going to be AI. I'd love your thoughts. I know you've done some work on this in the Senate. I'd love your thoughts on how AI is impacting society, good, bad, and how it might be good or bad for public service.
I love AI. I mean, I really do. But a part of this is I was a product manager in research and development at Wang Laboratories back in the mid-'80s. We did AI back then. AI was the voice-to-text recognition, optical character recognition, pattern recognition, automated workflows. That's all stuff I did as a young product manager in research and development at Wang Laboratories. This is another iteration. Make no mistake about it, computing power, large language models, quantum computing in the future are creating just a huge disruption. But I think it's generally positive. What we need to do is recognize, I've had some people, it was a couple of years ago, it was just after OpenAI introduced ChatGPT. I enrolled in the beta program for ChatGPT. They had no idea who I was. I'm a developer, so I enrolled as a developer, and about 30 hours after it was out, and I've been dealing with it daily ever since, that and some of the other LLMs that have come online. Look, it has tremendous potential. And the bell is rung. We had members shortly after ChatGPT came out, the industry said, we think we need about a 6-month pause, for any more AI development. I said, that sounds like a company that's about 6 months behind OpenAI. And the reality is, you can't slow down innovation. Once an idea is started, this is a small world. Does anybody think China is going to quiesce its malign use of AI? How many are familiar with distillation and how China actors sucked all the information out of OpenAI's LLM, right? They just literally sucked it all out. Now, it was a violation of their terms of service, but I don't think the CCCP really cares. Now they have vast majority of intellectual property that was pulled out of OpenAI. So they have the same baseline knowledge. We have to out-innovate them, and we have to create an environment that has either, and I've had this discussion with Sam Altman and several others in the space, they either need an industry set of standards that they adhere to, or they come up with a baseline of industry standards and recommendations for how the government regulates AI. But you've got to be very careful with that, because AI is an iteration of technology. I mean, do I really need governmental regulation on more advanced uses of enterprise resource planning and provisioning for supply chain management systems? Something I used to do for a living. Probably not. So how do you draw the line? And then also, how do you say, if you can be so smart as AI is today, social media platforms no longer tell me you can't be smart enough to make your platform safer and to know what content is being violated. I tell you, my concern with AI, I chair the Intellectual Property Subcommittee. I have a grave concern for creators, songwriters, musicians, performers. No society exists that it realizes its full potential unless you have a great complement of art and science. And I really do see AI as really destroying creative communities and destroying. Everybody's got to pay the bills at some point. Destroying that element of creative society. And so you worry about those things. How do you deal with intellectual property protections? How do you use AI for good to make sure that kids are not seeing horrible content, or that you're being socially engineered by a very smart base of AI technology with some nation-state influence and investment in it? Those are things that we have to work on, but it's here to stay. It's going to change jobs. It's sort of like the Industrial Revolution on steroids, but I think it's a good 10 or 15 years before they all start eating us. I'm kidding, but don't worry about it. Get over it. Read Who Moved My Cheese? I've got about, if you come into my office and remind me of it, I'll give you a copy. I've got about 90 copies left in my office, and I got it for a couple of reasons. It was a book that was published back in the late 90s. It's about embracing change. Don't be afraid of this. Figure out how to navigate the maze and figure out how to be a benefactor of it. I would love to have AI as a young person coming out of school today. It's going to make enterprising, hardworking people measurably smarter, and it's going to make lazy people measurably dumber. And be in the former. The fact that you're here probably puts you in that category. Just work hard, use it for good.
We're going to bring you guys in a minute, but I got to ask one more question before we do. We do this polling on polarization, right? Like, how bad is it? How are people thinking about it? And one of my favorite questions we ask, do you want more civility in politics? Like 93% say yes, which is as close to universal as you'll get in a poll. But then we start to ask the question a little bit differently. Agree or disagree with the following statement. Common ground and compromise are noble goals we want our leaders to aspire to. About 87%, I think, in our last poll.
That's a motherhood and apple pie kind of question.
Common good and compromise are noble goals. Literally the next question. Agree or disagree? I'm tired of leaders compromising on my values. I want them to stand up and fight the other side. 84% say they agree with that.
I love that poll.
Right?
I don't remember the numbers, but I remember that. It's like, yeah, we want you all to be friends, but we want you to fight like hell.
Right. Totally. Find common ground. As soon as you come to where I'm standing, we're on common ground, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a good example of that. All right, so the Respect for Marriage, I don't know if you know what that bill was, but it was one I led the negotiations on. Another one on Safer Communities Act, which had to do about gun violence and behavioral health. And then there was the bipartisan infrastructure bill, electoral count. There were about 5 bipartisan bills. I was involved in every bipartisan bill that we voted out in the last 2 years of the Biden administration. And then I led 2 of the dicier ones, one that got me a statewide censure. Proud of that, by the way. But every time we'd finish a vote, the Democrats would come up and high-five me and say, thank you for being bipartisan. I said, I appreciate that, man. I'm looking forward to the day that you prove to me that you will be. They look at me, what are you talking about? I voted on the bill. I said, you voted with 51 other Democrats. Not a single Democrat voted against it. How is that bipartisan on your part? My question is, if in the next election the roles are reversed, are you going to be willing to be one of 10 or 12 people to vote on something that you believe in and be bipartisan? Because you know the opportunity's out there. The only question is, are you truly capable of being bipartisan? And I hope, I've told them all, I hope in my remaining 453 days in the U.S. Senate that I can find at least one example of where they've in fact done what 12 to 15 Republicans did in the Biden administration.
Well, the other example, and the reason I bring it up, is we're seeing it play out right now, right? That tension between common ground compromise and fighting for values with the government shutdown.
Yeah.
Right? And you see people on both sides saying, yeah, keep up the fight. At the same time, polling showing everybody hates everybody, right? Like we blame both parties, but keep on fighting my side.
Well, that's what I mean. It's the formula. It's the I'm fighting for you. Trump, Obama did it. He's fighting for hope and change. Trump did it, make America great again, which was basically a Reagan phrase. But they are, we've got multi-personality disorder among the members and among the electorate, that they could answer that same question and not be immediately struck by how polar opposite their answers are.
Should we settle in for a long haul on this government shutdown?
Well, I think it's at least going to last past Saturday because they've got the No Kings parade. That'd be really raining on the parade if we actually came out of the shutdown before then, right? I hope that sounds as crazy as silly as it's supposed to sound. But yeah, I'm sure there are people going, well, I really do want to come out of the shutdown, but we got this parade about kings we got to do on Saturday, so maybe we got to wait till Sunday or Monday. I'm not wrong. So I'd say the odds are pretty low to come out of the shutdown before Saturday. And then maybe after the No Kings parade, we can get people back to finding the guy. Here's the problem that I'm telling all my Democrats. I talked with a couple of them just before I came over here. I said, guys, that if it was a gimmick, if we were calling it a clean CR, but it actually had something in it that was more than just continuing the funding that Democrats voted for the last time we had a funding bill. For 6 more weeks, while people like me make damn sure we get to a good place on the policy, on the Affordable Care Act policy subsidies. Why are we here? You voted no. You said, I want to stop spending money and create that distraction instead of trusting that there's enough Republicans like me who have said, we've got to address this to get Republican support for a longer-term spending bill. And now we got to get out of it. But they've kind of rode their horse into a box canyon.
But it gets back to that issue we talked about earlier, trust.
I know, and that's what I'm saying, guys. When have I ever, and the 10 or 12 other members in the Republican conference, ever betrayed your trust?
I bet
So
there are
why do
Democrats
I
out
need
there
a-
that can answer that question, though, right?
Why do I-
always
No, not among these
not
people.
about you, but
I'm just
generally.
But I'm just saying. So what you want is you don't want to appear to just have changed your mind and say, you know what, funding the government at the current level is probably okay. As long as you guys are committing to get in the Look, if we don't get, the reason why I think the Democrats should have more confidence in themselves is if we don't get these Affordable Care Act policy subsidies right, we are going to get our asses handed to us politically. In other words, it's self-governing. It's naturally going to happen. And if it doesn't, you can count on one or both chambers of the U.S. Congress next year no longer being led by Republicans. Let's just be objective about that. If you fell on health, I became the second Republican Speaker of the House since the Civil War in North Carolina. I bet my career, 18 months earlier when President Obama was on the high, this is March of 2009, I was so convinced that the Democrats were going to go it alone and make a problematic health care decision on a fundamentally sound goal, but a problematic health care decision. I quit my job convinced that if I could be the whip and I could be the campaign chair and I knew they were going to overreach, we were going to win a majority for only the second time since the Civil War. You make bad decisions on health care policy and you get kicked out. And that's why I think the Democrats should feel comfortable that the worst case scenario, if we didn't come through, and that there were enough people like me that have enough insight and experience to know what the consequences would be. I want to fix it for the efficacy of the policy. But there's a compelling political reason to do it beyond the policy reasons. They just need to buy into that. I mean, they need to lead. Take a risk. I mean, this is a risk. I mean, this business is about risk management. Take a risk. Your worst case scenario is you hand our political assets to us 12 months from now. I mean, people should know that, look ahead that way. These are adults. I don't feel like I have to talk to them like children.
All right, you ready for some good questions now?
Two fingers, remember.
When I call on you, who you are, where you're from, what you're studying, and question in the form of a question, please. All right, hands up. Yeah.
Yeah, this man right here.
Oh, okay.
Hi, I'm Nick. I'm a sophomore from Florida studying government. You kind of just talked about this actually a little bit, but I'm kind of curious. It's already been brought up, the H.R. 1 Big Beautiful Bill. Obviously, you voted against that. I think kind of one of the main reasons you voted against it was how it was going to affect kind of federal payments for Medicaid and all of that. But I'm kind of curious, you did also vote for the original repeal back in 2017. Kind of what was your reasoning for voting in favor of that? But
Oh, the repeal and replace.
yeah, I'm curious why you voted for that, but again.
They were both fundamentally flawed healthcare policies that the solution that Obama came up with was a Democrat overreach, and the solution and the H.R. 1 was a Republican overreach. It's that simple. Both fundamentally. Most of my career was spent in implementation. And I was convinced long before Obamacare was voted on, just based on what they were proposing, that it was going to fail, that it wasn't going to be a bipartisan work product, that it was going to fail. And I did that on the back of a napkin, just trying to understand how the policy was going to be implemented, how it was going to be disruptive to the healthcare systems, the insurance markets. Most of that stuff proved to be true. I had more time and I had more resources to do the impact assessment of the Medicaid provisions, not the Medicaid provisions coming from the House, incidentally. It was the Medicaid provisions that were added to the bill after the House passed what was $800 billion savings in Medicaid. That could have worked. Wouldn't have been ideal, but it could have worked. But then they added in not only the Medicaid payments, but they have a precipitous drop in state-directed payments in a manner that'd just be difficult to absorb. And see, at this point, I'd been Speaker of the House. I was there when we had a fiscal crisis. Not only did I vote to repeal Obamacare, I ratified a bill in North Carolina to make it illegal to expand Medicaid under Obamacare because I was convinced the vote that happened in June would someday happen, and then you would have 90% of your funding stream disappear overnight. So, I mean, I actually voted against both of them for very similar reasons.
All right. Let's go.
I guess more two fingers here.
Yeah, let's go right here.
I can take a one finger every once in a while, but.
Hi, I'm Meghna. I'm from Mumbai, India, but I grew up in Virginia. My question for you is that, of course, there's a lot of polarized Democrats, but then there's a lot of polarized voices within your party as well. How do you make sure that you're heard within your own party as like a moderate voice?
I think we spend way too much time thinking that people listen to us, hear us over time, quite honestly. So I just don't. I choose not to deal with that stuff. I'm kind of old-fashioned, treat people with respect, unless you disrespect me, man at the airport, or lady at an intersection, or that. But I think it's just get people to focus on outcomes, focus on producing, not performing, just focus on legislative outcomes. And do it at a 60-vote threshold so it'll have enduring value versus what we're seeing now with the increasingly simple vote majorities through reconciliation to get any of the thorny stuff done. It's not sustainable. It's the first thing you go after. People should know, why would you go after Obamacare and try and repeal it with reconciliation? Because it was passed on a purely party line vote, not through reconciliation, because for a brief period of time, Washington had the votes, the 60 votes in the Senate. But if you do a partisan bill, expect it to be on the target list for the majority that comes in that was in the minority at the time that it was passed. It always happens that way. But it's focus on policy. You know, people get rewarded for all the sensationalism right now. But at the end of the day, the ultimate reward is producing good, sound, enduring legislative policy, and just box all that stuff out. You'd be amazed at what a great relationship, what great relationships you can build with people on the other side of the aisle if you do that.
All right. Let's go right here. Yeah.
Hi, I'm a student in the School of Foreign Service here. I'm a freshman from Alexandria, Virginia. I am currently studying this semester free speech and comedy, and I'm a big proponent of free speech, and I think that comedians should be able to say what they want to as long as they're not, obviously defaming or inciting violence. But what do you think about government officials, specifically Trump using his platform about a joke about Hakeem Jeffries with a sombrero and a fake mustache? Do you think that's something that the person with arguably the most serious job in the U.S. should be doing?
No, and no, I thought it was silly. But also, can pick on some things that Chuck Schumer shared. It was kind of silly. Or the DNC.
I've been out for a decade.
Or the RNC. So no, they're all, that's what I'm saying, guys. Please, don't lead me or lead anybody to believe that the minority leader in the House with a sombrero on is the only example of unprofessional behavior on the part of, of the president or of the majority leader or the minority leader. I looked at it and thought, that's just not, it's not who we should be. Plus, it wasn't that funny. I mean, I guess, it's kind of funny to put a sombrero on a dog or something, but I mean, it was a pretty serious time, and I just didn't think that was a place for humor. Now, having said that, I am big on free speech. I was just telling my staff, I've got to start time limiting myself because I'm watching a lot of YouTube shorts. And I'm a huge, I love, way too much, man. It's all of a sudden, it's like 11 o'clock. I want to go to bed by 10. So, and I love Chappelle. I think that any comedian whose first segment of the first episode of the first season of the Chappelle Show was Clayton Bigsby, the world's only black-white supremacist, is brilliant. Who knew that we were going to have a gubernatorial candidate I could call Clayton Bigsby, a Republican, just 2 years ago? But I thought it was hysterical. I mean, look, if you go back and look throughout history, some of the most enduring dynasties had healthy jester program. They had history of allowing someone to communicate the sense of the people and sometimes using humor. I think it's very dangerous when we don't like a joke. Jeselnik, are y'all familiar with Jeselnik? I mean, that guy is pretty rough. I love it. And, people got to decide whether or not that's just kind of raunchy, raw humor for them, but bring it on. I mean, the comedy stimulates the mind unlike almost anything else. And comedy where you ultimately have to accept and laugh at your own behavior when it's satirized is when you finally get the joke. So we got to preserve the comedian. I don't mind politicians making one-liners. Sometimes they get in trouble for it. But using the official White House page to do it, or whatever the DNC or the RNC would do, I think it's amateurish.
As a guy who's big on free speech, how are you feeling about the state of free speech these days?
I worry about it. I worry about it because, but again, guys, what's the difference? We had the cancel sort of stuff going on, so everybody's for free speech unless it kind of gets into their sensitive areas. I'm wide open. More speech. I think the best, give more speech and let the market decide. As long as it's not hateful, as long as it's not inciting violence, I don't care how dirty, how profane you get. Just go out and express yourselves like a human being in a country that's premised on free speech. A lot of our strength comes from it, folks. You dumb down this country when you decide what is appropriate or not appropriate for some other human being to say. Govern yourself. Don't govern me.
All right, let's get some more. Yeah.
Hello.
There you go.
Okay,
I
sorry
thought
about
maybe it was
that.
just a talking stick.
Hi, my name's Manvi. I'm a sophomore in the college studying government, and I'm originally from Princeton, New Jersey. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on Democrats such as Governor Gavin Newsom of California kind of trying to fight what the Republican Party is kind of doing with like the insults and the attacks on social media. How do you feel like it's impacting the possibility for bipartisanship, and do you think that it's the right approach?
I don't know if I were Newsom, but again, it's another example where social media is rewarding it, getting the followers, whatever. I mean, if I were Newsom, I'd take a different approach. I'd probably use humor to do it, but I wouldn't probably move to the level he's moved so quickly. And he'd be well positioned to do it. Because I've had a couple of disagreements with the president, but I would never get overly snarky on social media. But I have had a couple of tongue-in-cheek responses that I felt, had a modicum of respect with a little bit of humor added into it. And I think it's a slippery slope. The president, they're going to fight back and forth. Now Newsom's more or less committed, so I see them both going down to the bottom of the hill together.
All right. Anyone on this side? Okay.
We got a man over there, I think, right there in the back.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're answering
I just didn't think we looked at everybody from this
I didn't
side.
see.
Over.
Okay, yeah.
What are
So
you,
let's go over here.
reflexively not looking to the right? Is that it?
Yeah, that's what I do.
Hi, my name's Daniel. I'm a senior in the School of Foreign Service from Long Island, New York. And could you talk a little bit about your decision to confirm Pete Hegseth back in whenever that was, and especially after we saw with the gathering of the generals last week, and you talk about politics as a game of risk management. Where was the risk analysis on that decision, and do you have any regrets at this point? Or
No, I'm glad you asked that question, because I sometimes try to cover some of that stuff on the front end. I was on Senate Armed Services for 8 years, for 4 terms, and then I moved off and went on to finance in the last Congress. I've decided if I'm not on the committee of jurisdiction, if I get a unanimous vote out of a committee, I'm going to defer to what I hope was their technical assessment of his skills. Now, I think in retrospect, maybe they were either overly generous with what they thought his skills were, or they've been surprised too. But he's clearly doesn't exhibit the capabilities that I would like in a Secretary of Defense right now. And some of that comes from the fact he wasn't a general officer. He didn't raise up through the ranks. He's had limited management experience. But I had already made a decision on the basis of the unanimous vote from the Senate Armed Services Committee to defer to them. Same way I would expect them to potentially defer to me if I'm in finance or banking or judiciary, 3 of the key committees for NOMS that I'm dealing with. And then after the vote out of the committee, there was a new allegation that came out. All the other allegations had more or less never risen to a level of having a firsthand corroborated account. So that's why there's no question there was stuff there, but it was very difficult to sort through. But there was no firsthand eyewitness account. Now we have this new one. And I was willing to go back, even though it had been voted out of committee, and do the homework. That's why I got so much attention, because I called the White House, said, look, if you force me to do the vote today, I'm a no vote. Because I want to complete this due diligence and satisfy in my own mind whether or not there's any sound evidence to back this latest allegation. By that Friday afternoon, I had, for a variety of reasons, concluded, number one, there was no one who would come forward with any kind of corroboration. It was one other person's commentary or assessment against 2 or 3 people that had a very different view. So that's why I deferred to the committee vote. But I think Secretary Hegseth has clearly demonstrated that he does not have the experience to run a large, complex organization like the DOD. And hopefully he's going to he'll have other people to help him. I don't think he's a bit as bad as people have characterized, but he definitely doesn't have the innate skills that he's leveraging from past experience. And that's a challenge for a job for what I think is arguably the most complex organization in the world, and consequential.
All right, let's try to squeeze in a couple more. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, let's go with her first.
Go.
Hi, my name's Erin. I'm a sophomore in the School of Foreign Service. I was wondering what your experience has been like with your fellow Republican colleagues in Congress when you have gone out against the grain in public. Is their reaction to you behind the scenes different than it is in public? Do they increase their respect for you based on what you've done and still not change their behavior? Or do they kind of just say, look, I completely disagree with you?
No, I actually think that every member, are you talking about the members' reactions or like voters' reactions?
Members' reactions, yeah.
I think most of the members, if you take a look at the Safer Communities Act, I think that there were far more people who were glad that that bill got passed than voted for it. We had about 24, is that about right? 24 Republicans ultimately vote for it. But it made sense, and if they understood the bill, but they were worried about being able to explain it. And so in some ways they seemed appreciative that we just go ahead and just charge for it and get it done. I think similarly for respect for marriage, I think there are probably 2-3 dozen members that are glad that we just took it on and got it done and settled the issue. And so I think, most of it was like, I don't think I'd do what you did, but I'm kind of glad you did it, or congratulations on it. So there was more, I don't think I've had any, it may be my reputation too. I don't like people getting up in my face. I don't even care if you're a member. So I've never had a member get up in my face. And I'd like to think it's because they're okay with me versus wondering what this redneck's going to do to them.
All right, I think we got time for one more, so let's have you close us out.
Thank you for being here, Senator. I'm getting my master's in applied intelligence at the School of Continuing Studies. I have a question about civil service. In your oversight role, have you found that there's been a politicization of the federal bureaucracy over the years? Is that increasing, and is that something that you actively seek to fight against in your oversight role, or do you see that as more a natural part of our process, that as people come in and out of the White House, that there's going to be some natural politicization of our federal bureaucracy?
Yeah, it's hard. People are humans, even if you're civil servant, career civil servant, some of them just come to work, do their work, and if they want to do their politics, they go back home, they volunteer to do their politics. There's increasing evidence that either side of the aisle, we've got large bases of people who are politically influenced, and I think they need to just check those opinions at the door. And so part of it, when you go back and see, if you use something like the FBI investigations, and I think we may find some more after this administration's over, where a lot of it was driven by people who had an ideological bias. I think that's true of some of the things that we saw in the Biden administration. I think it's going to prove to be true in the Trump administration. Was also proven to be true in the Obama administration. That those folks, just check it at the door, folks. Don't abuse your position in government to advance your ideology. Because I tell everybody this, if you want to act like a politician, expect to be treated like one. And if you're a civil servant and you're taking on a political angle when you're at work, then expect to be treated like a politician. I tell CEOs the same thing. Y'all want to take a conservative view or a liberal view, and then you come to me and say, I'm getting beaten up, you decided to be a politician. Civil servants should do the same thing. Just go in, do your job. It has nothing to do with getting people elected. It has to do with serving the American citizens or whatever agency you work in. Go and do that, go home. It's kind of like, I've heard a few people talking about they're studying foreign service. Man, I hope that means some of you are going to go in the foreign service. Those people are some of the most amazing people I have the privilege to deal with when I'm traveling abroad. When I was out at a station in Kyiv in Ukraine a few months ago, or in really bad spots like Iraq during the war, or Afghanistan, you go in there and you see these career foreign service people, they are the real deal. And they are really good at being apolitical. I think the foreign service is probably, some people have tried to cast the charge here or somebody else as being politically motivated. Very little evidence of that. These folks are true, consummate professionals, and thank God they're all over the world. We just need people back home who are, and maybe part of that's because they're out of here, so they're not 24/7 seeing what we're seeing. be that way. Just be that person that's extraordinarily good at your job and only worried about that. And I don't care if you go home every weekend and knock doors for a Republican or a Democrat. That's your hobby. Don't let that transcend into your day job, and you'll be fine. But you know, people, there's going to be consequences in the mean. Most things that can all end by people saying, "Okay, I get it. No politics. I don't want to be treated like a politician at work. I'll do that when I'm home."
When we launched the Institute 10 years ago, we came up with the slogan, public service is a good thing. Politics can be too. Gets tested a lot these days. But we firmly believe that it can be, and it all begins with dialogue. So, Senator Tillis, thank you for coming and having a dialogue with us tonight.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it.